And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Made in Abyss Season 2 reaches its grand conclusion. I really don't know what to say if I'm honest. This has just been an insane and indescribably beautiful journey. This series, man, it never fails to simultaneously make me so happy and yet so empty. This arc truly feels like my own personal warm darkness. Made in Abyss Season 2 has just been an incredibly beautiful and endearing time, and while it will be sad to see this anime go for a while, the payoff that Kinema Citrus gave us with this incredibly beautiful conclusion more than makes up for it. It'll leave me with this warm yet very empty feeling for years, but if I'm honest, I couldn't think of a more cruel and more fitting takeaway from this arc. Hello everyone, welcome to another and the final Made in Abyss Season 2 episode review. Today we'll be talking about episode 12, Gold. Now there is so much I want to talk about in this review. Obviously, I mean look at the bloody video length. I hope you'll give me the floor to just flaunt some emotions for a good while, and you use this time to get yours out there as well in the comments below. I'm sure you all have a lot of thoughts and feelings, and I, as well as many other delvers, want to hear them. But before we go any further, I need to very quickly thank everyone who was involved in this project. To Kevin Penkin and the musical crew, thank you. Thank you so much for putting so much time and effort into your work. From Kevin Penkin, who had to compile these songs from home due to COVID, to the musical team featuring Luna, Uzhan, and Arno Dan, and I apologize if I've butchered your names completely, whose emotions and passions were on full display in these scores. To Masayuki Kojima and Shinpei Yamashita for bringing out the absolute best this season could offer from a directive standpoint. To my Seiyu gals, Maria Issei, Misaki Kuno, Miyu Tomita, Shiori Izawa, and Yuka Terasaki for your incredibly emotional performances, as well as Hiroaki Hirata and Mitsuki Saki for portraying the best possible versions of these incredible characters so incredibly well. I'm so proud of everyone for this absolutely remarkable adaptation, and I want to thank everyone at Kinema Citrus for all their time, patience, and effort. You've all made something above and beyond what we all could have expected, and it has been incredible. Akihito Sensei, of course, my man, for creating this absolutely incredible series that has changed so many people's lives, myself definitely fucking included. God man, I love anime, and I fucking love Made in Abyss. Now before I get even more passionate about the episode itself, we need to go through the very structure these reviews are built on. Come on, you know the drill by now. Let's get stuck into the manga changes. To be perfectly honest, there really aren't too many major changes to the manga. The first of the differences though is that Faputa looks onto the Narahade still alive inside the village, who are praying for her safety. She refers to them as fools who are clinging on to their aspirations, which she directly relates to herself in a line later in the episode. Though the implication is that these guys were reading the manga and the anime anyway. While they still do appear in the episode, it's just at a later point, and with different dialogue more or less to Sue. Also in the manga, when Fapta is absorbing the predators of the village, the Narahade still alive see this ability as part of the balancing. This episode is heavily based on chapters 58, 59, and 60, but it differs majorly when it goes back in time and incorporates in full 2 bonus chapters I mentioned throughout this review series that I feared actually wouldn't get an adaptation. These being chapters 51.5 and chapter 55.5. I wasn't sure if either of these were going to make the cut, but they actually did somehow. But I won't lie, I did think it was a little strange that these moments played after Gabaroon's death though. I would have thought it would have made more sense to have made that death way more traumatic by playing these events prior to his demise. That being said though, I still did get emotional when that scene happened in the last episode, don't get me wrong. I just thought overall the order was unique. Not off-putting, but still worth mentioning. Also, this small little fight sequence is also completely anime original. For something this pretty looking, I know, it comes as quite a surprise, doesn't it? There is also a clarification on how Magikaja-san has actually obtained this new form in the manga. Apparently there was a Narahara that used themselves as value to turn Magikaja into this new form in order to assist the Mugi squad in excavating Riko. A tiny thing too is that Magikaja-san is also the one who happens to notice Washi-kun, and he's the one who actually alerts Mugi about it. And look, I know it's a tiny detail, but I just want to preserve the memory of Magikaja as much as I can, alright? Let me have this! When Reiko was climbing up the stairs to meet Fapta, she recalls her time with Riko as she ponders what Riko means to her. This panel appears which just aims to develop the relationship these two had. From Riko first giving her clothes to wear in the village, to cutting her hair when using it to fight the Ugasami, from the first time she faints after using the white whistle in the manga, all these moments are just here to build up their chemistry. Speaking of which, another difference in the manga is that they show flashbacks to her time when venturing with the Ganja Corps that weren't actually present in the anime. There is this really endearing panel where she's tucking Belaf in, and I know a bunch of y'all ship these two wonderful characters, so enjoy that little tidbit. But the anime also decided to have some original sequences like Irem Yui in the Flower Garden that Liza loves so much in the fourth layer. And my god, that was brilliantly presented here in the anime. It's just such a small but emotional and charming moment, honestly. When Riko blows her white whistle to give Reg the power up he needs to face the two Ryu Sazai, Prishka can actually be seen with her when delivering this line. In the anime, Prishka just gets her own still frame. It's a minor detail, but an interesting one. We also got some original dialogue where Nanachi and Majikaja-san are escaping. In the manga, these lines don't exist at all. The most tragic, but in my opinion the best manga change in this episode, however, is the Ma-san disappearing sequence. Get this? This was an anime original, and I think it was fucking brilliant. It's painful in all the right ways, and I'm not gonna lie, despite knowing it was coming, but not knowing how it was going to come, got me really misty-eyed. What a brutal way of showing the reality of their situation. In the manga, you actually don't know that Majikaja-san and Ma-san had actually disappeared until they get to this point. And to further, in case people don't understand, as we know, things that were created in the village cannot exist outside of it, so when the village itself ceases to exist, so do all those who gave themselves up to it. God, man, it's just so tragic. And speaking of which, when Riko delivers this line in the manga, she can be seen with some tears in her eyes. I thought this was a nice touch because it shows that even when she's trying to put on face, her true feelings still manage to seep through. But look, alright, that's enough. I'm almost on the brink of tears, I'm so tired and sad, and just reading this damn script is making me depressed, so we need a happy change. By God, I don't care how minuscule it is, I'm putting it in here. The final change is that when Reg is charging at Fapta to give her a huge hug in the manga, it didn't include this sequence of him actually missing on the account of her dodging, which I thought was just a precious little touch that adheres to how flinchy Fapta can truly be. But the fact is, they still have a playful little moment together, which was so goddamn cute, and the happiness that we needed after that devastating 45 minutes of fucking pain. Now that the manga changes are out the way, it's time for the anime synopsis. I'll also throw in some tidbits in here just to make it a bit more interesting. But don't get me wrong, my passionate fanboy juices are leaking out of me, and gee whiz do I need to talk about how much I fucking love this episode, so let's get through the anime synopsis now. We return to Fapta in her newest form. Now with the desire to complete her mission and seek out a new purpose, she utilizes Judo-Mo one last time. Judo-Mo is the will of the village, and now infused with various parts of Fapta's siblings, he obeys her very command. Together they fight against the invaders, even going up against the Ryu Sazai. We then take a trip down memory lane where we see Fapta and Gabu's first meeting together. Fapta drawn to Gabu by the mere warmth of Gabu, and because she detects no ill intent, she decides to befriend him. And Gabu, wanting to learn more about Fapta, very much welcomes her company. A bit of time passes and Gabu teaches Fapta about the words her mother used to speak. This is where she learns the meaning of Haku, and the very concept of value. As time passes, Gabu was able to fix himself using parts that Fapta was able to fetch for him. Once able to move again, both begin their search for more value, and Gabu gives Fapta her name, which in her mother's tongue roughly translates to the Undying Princess. We also learn that Fapta is the one who gave Gabiroon his name, which roughly translates to the Queen's Guardian, which Gabu has acted as all this time. We then jump back to the timeline of episode 2 and we see the moment in which Fapta takes Prishka from the group. Being the little fluffballed tsundere she is, she decides rather than confronting Reg Senpai about his fated role in her play, she decides to use Prishka as bait to lead the trio into the village, whilst also freeing Prishka from her cramped body. Also, she seems a little jealous of Nanachi as their aroma is incredibly nice smelling, which is just a fun cute little tidbit. I sense rivalry. We reconvene with the Mugi squad who have successfully excavated Riko from the upper sector of the village. Majikaja apparently made a deal with another Narahade who used their value to give Majikaja his new body in order to help the group escape the village. We also learn that Nanachi and Reg have also managed to cop a ride. Everyone feels guilty and takes blame for the destruction of the village, but sweet Mama Mugi reassures them that nobody in the village feels that way at all. In fact, they're just pleased in learning the origins of the village and even hearing Fapta's voice for the first time ever. They then happen to spot Wazukin and stop to converse with him during his final moments. He asks Riko if the trip to the Abyss has been worth it, and she, in very Riko fashion, believes it to be so. She doesn't regret her descent into the Abyss as she has learned so many incredible things, seen so many incredible sights, and made so many incredible friends. She also mentions how the star compass that Aveiko had also happened to be with Riko at some point in time. While there isn't confirmation if these two are the exact same relic, it's a nice coincidence. But that being said, this is Main Abyss, so was that truly a coincidence? Well, that's left an interpretation as of right now. Wazukin doesn't fully explain his motives and plans, but he does confirm that the end goal was to become something greater than a human in order to tackle the Abyss and find the true Golden City. But knowing this is the end, he parts with one final request, and that's for the group to merely watch over Fapta. Wazukin leaves with a warning saying that something more terrifying than a dream gone unfulfilled waits deeper in the Abyss. That being said, this doesn't faze the group at all. They are instead filled with determination. Riko leaves Wazukin with a cheeky smile and he vanishes into dust. Rest in peace, you child-eating, prophecy-fulfilling, cocoon-looking, gorgeous baby man. The group hear Faptor's call and together with an Arahade squad, they head towards her sound, for one final confrontation with the princess. The group also managed to barter with Gourmet and obtain the page from Liza's notebook that Riko looked at in episode 3. They give this to Riko as a sign of goodwill. They all decide to head back up to her and hopefully pick up Veiko on the way. Speaking of Veiko, we see her gradual ascent upwards out of her instinct. Despite her doubts in being able to help, she still wants to head towards Faptor and try to do something. As she's reflecting on all the fun past memories, a tragic reality sets in. When the hole was open in the village, the force field had seeped its way through the cracks, meaning that the Curse of the Abyss is now fully active, blanketing the entire village. And Veiko, being unable to see the curse because she's still human, doesn't realize this has happened, and is now undergoing the terrible curse of the 6th layer. Loss of humanity via transforming into Narahade. The reason her appearance is so disconfigured and why she has almost lost her sense of humanity is because of the way in which she had the curse thrusted upon her. Remember that Nanachi's transformation was referred to by Bondrewd as the Blessing, which required a very specific set of circumstances to pull off. Another way to become a Narahade was via a connection through the village, i.e. becoming a Narahade based on your desires. But Veiko unfortunately was a victim to the curse in its natural state, because all this time she was actually human. Veiko begins to go unconscious and slowly accepts her fate, but Pakian comes to the rescue. Because the group cannot ascend the abyss now, Pakian uses what's left of her life to run up the stairs and throw Veiko so that she is on the same level as the trio. Pakian, like the honourable wife she is, sacrifices herself to the boundary in order to save Veiko. Rest in peace, my Cyclops waifu. Nanachi picks up Veiko and tells Reg to continue his rendezvous to the princess, while the Mugi squad slowly but surely make their way there, avoiding the curse using Nanachi's eyesight. Faptor, despite being immortal though, was still struggling against the Ryu Sazai's. That is until Reg arrives and exclaims he'll help her in her desire to liberate the village. Faptor, perplexed as to why he's only given a vague answer, as there isn't much time to spare. Reg insists that she meets with the Mugi squad and Riko to move on to phase 2 of her plan, and he'll hold him off, but the Ryu Sazai are not easygoing creatures. He hesitantly asks Riko to blow the white wisp one more time. She does so, which gives Reg the power up he needs, but Riko is now officially out of commission, because of the strain it takes on her body. Reg fends off the Ryu Sazai with his new badass form, while Faptor reconvenes with everyone else. In order to fully destroy the village, Faptor requires a bit more value from the remaining villagers, and only once it's completely drained will her body truly perish, as she must consume the remaining villagers to allow her the power to do so. There is a hint of hesitation in Faptor, but Mugi breaks it, proclaiming that this is exactly why she and the other Narahade have returned. They offer their bodies, as well as their actions, to help Faptor achieve her goal. Reg is still fighting the Ryu Sazai and leads them outside the village, where he notices the bridge of the village has been reinforced, likely when Wazukin tried to stop the Iron Rain from falling. He also reinforced the bridge, which has now made the access to the village much easier for creatures from the outside. Reg uses all of his power to destroy the bridge, and Faptor is finally all valued up. She uses all of her value and finally destroys the village. Her goal finally complete. She and Irem Yui are truly free. But out of energy and value, Faptor lays amongst the destruction. It turns out she didn't absorb everyone in the village. She gave Magikaja and Marsan the order to get Riko, Nanachi, and Veiko outside the village and help them escape. Faptor, about to meet her end, is saved by Reg though, and everyone is escaping the village while riding inside of Magikaja. Everyone is terrified from the disruption that ensues, but Riko, being the precious dumpling she is, uses this chance to give Marsan a stitched up copy of the small plushie that was taken away from her in the 3rd episode when she damaged Menya. Marsan, getting emotional, embraces them both, as if she'll protect them no matter the cost. Outside of Magikaja, we learn though, all of his legs have been damaged, but the destruction hasn't slowed down either. In order to protect those remaining, he uses all of his value to take control of Faptor, as again, his true form is gas, which allows him to take control of bodies. Using Faptor's body as a canister, he with Reg ward off the destruction. The village now destroyed causes Marsan and Magikaja-san to disappear. Thank you, Magikaja. You were the goodest of Robo Dog boys there was. And thank you, Marsan, you were a truly loyal friend till the very end. We cut to Faptor, who is awoken in a small cavern with everyone else. She recognizes Veiko immediately because she inherited Bella's memories. Riko, holding the plushie she made for Marsan, is asked by Nanachi if she's feeling alright, despite everyone in the village having now been erased. Nanachi tries to reassure her that they are all on their own adventure to tackle the abyss, and that she shouldn't feel bad, but Riko interrupts her and says that she knows, and that she won't ever forget how they saved them. God, this moment broke me in the manga when I first read it. And now, the fated encounter. Faptor and Veiko talk about the kind of person Irem Yui was. Veiko insists that while they bear similarities in their appearance, in person they are very, very different people. Irem Yui was shy and grabby, whilst Faptor has an inability to get close to people and is quite brash. but their passions and drives are still similar. Fapta also proclaims that the memories of Vaiko were completely non-existent to her, meaning that when Inamui gave birth to Fapta, she gave all of her memories to Fapta except one, and that memory being the bond between Inamui and Vaiko. She just didn't want to part with him no matter what. Vaiko, now losing consciousness, sees Inamui and Fapta, and proclaims just how happy she was to have these dark eyes, as with them she was able to properly see Inamui, her warm darkness. Vaiko perishes, and Fapta, overcome with emotion, breaks down into tears. And dude, just typing this got me misty-eyed. We cut to moments later where Fapta has made a grave for Vaiko, burying her with what remains of her mother. It is at this point that Reg invites Fapta to join them to venture into the depths of the abyss together. But Fapta feels like Reg has no reason to really ask her because he has forgotten who she truly is. But Reg insists that that's not important. He wants to be with the Fapta from now, the Fapta he's seen. Before she can answer in true tsundere fashion, she quickly changes the subject to Riko and how her role was to take care of everyone around her. She knew this role because she had spoken with Prushka, who insisted it's not good to fight. And that Riko also feels the exact same way. Fapta says that she must go and see the world. She must find value for herself. And when asked if she would join, she merely says, "I'll think about it." But come on, she's a tsundere. You know she's totally gonna join him, right? There's so much foreshadowing. Akihito wouldn't do that, right? Right? Fapta takes one last glance over the village and bids her final farewell to Uruburu and all those who have got her to this point. Heading out now, Sosu. And then the episode ends. Ah, finally! Only took, what, 20 minutes? Now that that's all fresh in your mind, let's talk about this episode as well as some interesting little details sprinkled throughout. Firstly, what an incredible rollercoaster of emotions, from tears of happiness to tears of pain, from a warmth that comes with seeing these characters finally together, to the coldness that ensues when watching so many of those who have been with us since the start perish in instances. There are just so many iconic moments in this episode that we just have to talk about, so let's go through them. Firstly, the adapted bonus chapters, which I failed to anticipate, was such a pleasant surprise. I also really liked how it was handled in terms of its pace. It didn't feel rushed, but it felt like a lot had happened in such a short amount of time. I also liked that Fapta mentioned that when examining Riko, that she is confused as to where her soul came from. I believe this is in reference to the fact that Riko was a stillborn in the Abyss and was revived, but I say revived very lightly, inside the Abyss via the curse warding relic. As we know, things inside the box still get hit with the curse of the Abyss, but somehow things inside of it still spring to life. But over time, their nerves just completely stop and return to death. And Riko walks that line every day. She could potentially collapse at any moment, so let's just hope that doesn't happen. Secondly, animation quality in this episode, dude. Both in Fapta's fight sequences at the start of the episode, when Reg fights the Ryu Sazai using Riko and Prushka's efforts, to the collapse of the village, and even the more interactive personal sequences between Reg and Fapta, they were just fantastically well done. And I love that the quality has never really gone down. I swear the team just know exactly when to animate at their absolute best ability. And a big moment in this episode that I'm sure will probably get overlooked is the sequence with Wazukun. I really love this moment in the manga. Many others, though, thought his death was quite weak or rushed, but I feel like his influence over the group from this point onwards should make up for that. And not to mention, I quite like the way he went. It feels very fitting for his character. And this sequence, man, it's super well written. The idea of something becoming beyond human, being the resolution that's far beyond physically changing oneself, but embedded in the decisions and choices we choose to make is so made in Abyss. And it really plays into the idea that I mentioned much earlier on in a previous review, where choices are a big thing about this series. To what you do as a leaguer both in Wazukun and Riko's shoes, to decisions that Reg has to make, like saving Nanachi but at the expense of the village, to Nanachi deciding to have to put Midi down a second time. Like, there are so many choices in... It's just, it's so well done. I really like that he essentially reminds us that there is no certainty in hell. All you can do is wiggle and do your best to survive and not give in to despair. Despite seconds later literally saying they should probably give in to their own despair. But hey, that gives room to my favourite line Riko has ever uttered in this entire series. And that's simply, it's not going to play out the way you say it will. With that endearing and confident smile on her face, Wazukun fades into nothingness, and I love that line. It's so fitting for Riko. While naive at times, sure, she's grown so much and understands her and her team's limits, yet in spite of those limits, she is sure that they have exactly what it takes to see their journey through, and I fully believe it. And saying that to a prophet who would do whatever it takes to make his dreams a reality, is just such a big dick energy move, dude. I think Riko's fantastic, just a brilliant and well-rounded character. And you know who else I love? My wife! Oh, Oh no. Ooh, jeez, yeah, that's bad. Alright, so I know a lot of people want my thoughts on this sequence. And I'll be honest, this sequence haunted myself and many manga readers. This scene, like, I knew it was coming, and it still destroyed me. The fact that the animators also whimsically decided to animate the despair that is my wife being brutally transformed into the curse is a sick joke. But my god, was it handled brilliantly. While the manga textually is the more brutal, even the manga didn't just happily decide to let her entrails leak out of her face and onto the floor. Like, Jesus, Kinema Citrus, what the fuck is this? Oh, poor Veiko, man. It's such a tragic end to such a compelling and innocent character. The fact that all this time she was human and didn't know it was also another aspect of her character that just makes you feel so bad for her. But I think what affects me most about this scene, outside of its brutality, is that despite undergoing this absolutely brutal and intense transformation, she doesn't blame anyone but herself. Not even thinking about how unfair the situation is, but instead just loathing and sadness and just apologizing for not being helped to anyone. Like, it's so fucking tragic. At least she's with Pakian, right? And speaking of which, that was so sad too, man! Well, yes, reading the manga gives more context behind their relationship these two had, from obviously, you know, that panel. But as well as Pakian taking charge to take care of Veiko when she's feeling drained and tired, the anime still managed to make that moment very impactful despite not including any of these sequences. Even if anime-onlys who aren't aware of the context didn't quite understand the way of the relationship, I'm sure they still somewhat felt affected by this moment. Let's move on from that though. I also really like the interpretation from this episode from Kinema Citrus's point of view. I thought this entire sequence in the manga was supposed to be a slowly paced, beautiful moment, but Kinema Citrus said, bro, fuck that. Pump the Kevin music juice up to 11 and let that hype unravel. And while it may not have been emotional in terms of tears, it was emotional in terms of pure adrenaline. That fucking OST, dude. Whew, jeez. It felt like a grand crescendo inside of like a club. It was nuts. And it just ends with a huge bang. I loved how it was handled here, honestly, and the animation just did not disappoint. Also, because I want to talk about Ma-san, I want to bring up an interesting detail that might have been overlooked. Did you know Ma-san didn't actually have a name prior to Riko meeting her? It's Riko who actually gives Ma-san that name. And we know this because when conversing with Fapta, Ma-san tells her that her name is Ma. And if you recall from a while ago, it's Riko who says, I'm just going to call you Ma-san. Which just makes the events that follow so sad, man. Because Ma-san was reborn as a Narahara inside the village, when the village disappears, so do those who tie to it. Those that exist within the village cannot exist outside of it after all. I just love how loyal little Ma friend was until the very end. For a character that said only one word, it feels like she said so much and we got to really connect with her. She definitely won our hearts in the end. And another tidbit to do with the demise of fallen comrades is Magikaja. As we know, his true form is gas and his body's a canister. This is why he disappears, but his body doesn't, and why he is able to take on Fapta's body. It's an interesting detail that was mentioned in the third episode of the series, for anyone wondering. But not only that, Fapta picks up an interesting habit shortly after being possessed by our favourite robot dog that Akihito actually confirmed recently. Her newfound finger-clacking habit is actually because of Magikaja, who frequented this habit throughout the series. I love that despite everyone disappearing, a remnant of them somehow still remains in Fapta. Just small details like that to help bring these characters to life. And now my second favourite moment in this episode was seeing Fapta and Veiko finally connecting. Oh, what a beautiful moment in the manga, and the anime took that moment and made it 77.7 times better. The emotions are at their highest in this moment. It's such a beautiful exchange of words, and the delivery supporting those words were just some of the best in the series. A moment I do love in a tragic sense is the way that, after a while, Veiko starts to lose her grip on life, and as a result, starts to see Irem Yui and Fapta despite their differences. But because they see Irem Yui, she gets to express her true deepest feelings. While Irem Yui isn't around anymore, I'm sure she heard those words. And I'm sure Veiko changed Irem Yui as well. Buried together, forever as one. God, this series, man. No show does it like Made in Abyss. I'll be honest. This shit is just so painfully beautiful in every which way. And finally, my all-time favourite moment in this entire episode. Its grand conclusion. I adore everything about how this was handled. From the Gravity soundtrack, which played to lead us into this series for its first ever arrival in the Abyss with the Ganja Corps, to the seiyu's performances throughout this moment, the animation work and the colour, everything about this was just so perfectly handled, man. I really love this moment in the manga, but I think it just translated so much better in the anime. The idea of Fapta being so tsundere as to not give the trio a proper answer as to whether or not she would join them on their journey is also so fitting for a character. But like, come on y'all, it's Fapta. Akihiro wouldn't dedicate a whole ass season to a character we would never see again. I won't spoil anything obviously if she does or doesn't join, but just think about the logistics of it, yeah? These are just the thoughts I had when I first finished reading chapter 60, that's all I'm gonna say. I also loved her interaction and dialogue with Reg in this moment. She is genuinely confused as to why Reg would even want to be with her after everything that's happened, and after him losing his memories, but Reg couldn't care less about that right now. Like, he's seen old sides of Haputa from now, and he still wants to be with her. It's just so fucking cute and endearing, man. I love their chemistry so much. And the way they play together is just, oh, it's so nice, man. It's just kids being kids. It's just nice seeing our characters acting their age, you know? And also, props again to my gal Riko. I love how she was very clearly going to ask Factor the same thing, only to be interrupted by Reg during that moment. And I also like that little I agree stance in the background, as if she truly wants Factor to join as well. There was just, so much great character writing and portrayal in this episode, and I don't think you could have done these chapters a better service than this. Honestly, Kinema Citrus, you guys absolutely crushed this episode, and above all else, you crushed this season. I think I got all my thoughts out there. So now it's time for the passionate spiel and a final farewell to the Iraburu village. Main Abyss to me isn't just an anime. Main Abyss to me isn't just an experience. Main Abyss to me isn't just a hobby, nor is it just a passion. Main Abyss to me is like a warmth. This series, as weird as it may sound, feels like it's been with me for so long. I wouldn't brand it as an addiction, I would instead brand it as a genuine part of my life. I love this series, like, so goddamn much, and seeing so many people gather together to watch this history in the making unfold has been such a blessing to see realised. This series, man, it's truly a relic of its own, and seeing it discovered and appreciated for an incredible find it is has been so special. I'm so proud of Main Abyss, and I'm so fucking proud of not just those involved in its creation, but all of you who've been supporting it. I'm sure Akihiro and everyone involved can truly feel your appreciation for this series. I know I have, from the hours I spend reading your comments. Speaking of which, reviewing this series every week, despite how long these videos take and how little sleep I get because of them, has been one of the most honourable experiences I've ever had the pleasure of having. So thank you all for giving me the time and day to just openly talk about a series that means so much to me. Now look, I don't want to get more sappy than I already am, so I'll just leave you with this. Final thoughts? You know what? Yeah, Main Abyss was kind of mid if I'm honest. I mean, it was great, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Please keep supporting this series in any way you can, and please don't rush Akihiro for new chapters. Let's just be patient, and let's just let this story unfold at the pace the genius behind it wants. Trust me, the wait will be worth it, and we will all be here for it. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I bid you and all of Iraburu a final farewell. With a sense of pride and a yearning for the abyss in our hearts, let's continue this journey onwards. To the Netherworld's bottom, everyone. Let's get going. After all, there are still plenty of blessings and curses that await us, even deeper in the abyss.